Oh, hey guys, it's Quinn here, and I'm reading on my honor reading book. I don't know if it's a part three or last because I can't tell if I'm gonna do all of it. So let's just get started, anyways. Jill, the angry voice came immediately. This is chapter 8, by the way. After the slammed door, Joe, where are you? Joe lay on his back in the middle of his bed, staring at the darkened light fixture. The shadow of the fixture stretched across the ceiling, an electricized gray spider. And bent down the wall, when he had to first lay down on the bed, the shadow of a small blob right next to the light. Joel, are you up there? Came his father's voice again, and Joel shook his head slowly from side to side. No, he wasn't up there. He wasn't anywhere. Had Mrs. Sabrinsky told his father that? All afternoon, the telephone had rung at the frequent intervals, and then the doorbell ding dong, ding dong, knock knock, rattle rattle, the first public calling. Obviously, sent across the street by Mrs. Sabrinsky, then Miss Bertinsky herself. Joe! Tony! But the house key was in Joel's pocket and no one could get it in. Except his parents when they got home from work. They have their own keys. Joel had there for one afternoon and wait for one to get them home. Yet, though, it would be his mother who would get there first, though she usually did get home before his dad had started to work earlier in the morning. The paper for his route has been dropped to his front porch about 2 hours before. He hasn't heard the thunk where they hit the concrete. He had to be able to make himself get off of bed to do anything about them. I could be gone on my route when they come home, he had thought. He hadn't moved. Joel. His door shot open with a report with a firecracker, and, as if connected to the door by a spring, he lifted off the bed, the blood rushed to her brain in sudden movement, and he swayed giddily in the middle of his floor. So are you here, Mrs. Sabrinsky thought you were. Joe didn't say anything. He started to spot on the front of his father's feet. What are you doing? Walking yourself in the house all day? What do you mean by this kind of behavior? Joel's gaze traveled by his father's belt buckle. His father was now looking around the room. Where's Tony? He asked. Mrs. Sabrinsky said you two boys spent the entire afternoon locked in the house. Tony's not there, Joel said. Where is he then? Joe gave a small shrug. His father ran his fingers through his hair in expectoration. What's going on, Joel? This isn't like you, sneaking in the house, leaving Tony's mother to worry. He took a step forward to Joel, but Joel didn't flinch. If you don't know what flinch is, then go look at Google or something, because I don't know what that is. He looked into his father's face, waiting for the blow that he was sure would come. Must come. His father had never hit him, but now he would now. I guess I fell asleep. He said, I didn't hear a thing. He spoke out of the deep calm that had taken hold of us sometime in the long afternoon. Besides, he added, it's my house, I can come here if I want to. Now, his father would hit him now. Joel's father quit taking under his hair and dropped his hand. Of course it's your house, he said quietly. But you don't have permission to walk yourself in here when Mrs. Prinsky is supposed to be looking after you. She wouldn't have even known if you were here if Bobby hadn't caught a glimpse of your going through the door. Snoops, Joel said. What? His father asked, beginning to look exasperated again. Never mind. Well, where's Tony then? His mother will want to know. In the river, Joe thought about while and he said, on the road to the Starved Rock. His father tipped his head to one side. He looked skeptical. Alone? He asked. I came back, Joel said. Starved Rock was too far. I came back. Was this what he had a plan to say? He wasn't sure. Bobby appeared in the doorway, his fist cocked in his hips in imitation of her mother's favorite stance. When she was cross with either of them, guys aren't supposed to be in the house with mommy and daddy are gone. He said it is his best boy, you're going to get it, the voice. So what? Joe snapped back and instantly deflated. Bobby ducked his head, tucking his thumb into his mouth. Joel's father was studying his face immediately. You mean to tell me? He said. That Tony rode all the way to Zarwalk by himself? I guess he did, Joel said. He whined to me. About his mother's giving him permission to go. I found that for Mrs. Zabrinsky, too. Joel could feel his father gaze like a burning pressure. He felt his breath, waiting for a moment when all he'd known. His father only shook his head, looked away. I feel responsible. You are responsible, Joel wanted to say. Instead, he asked, his voice dull and flat. Do you want me to go see if I can find him? No, of course not, his father sighed. It's too far to go back on your bike. Anyway, you need to get started on your paper route. He turned and started out of the room, calling back over his shoulder. I'll telephone the Zabrinskys, tell them that Tony will probably be late. Very late, Joe thought. He had a strange urge to laugh. Tony's dead. Don't you know that? He wanted to yell. But since it was obvious his father didn't know, that his father didn't know anything, he kicked the leg out of his bed and muttered, Friggin' newspapers! Bobby's eyes grew around. His father thought he must have heard, didn't turn back. He wasn't going to do anything, no matter what. Can I help you with your route today, Joel? Bobby asked. Bobby was always wanting to help him with his route. With his scout projects, with anything he did, sometimes Bobby even helped him with when it was his turn to dish his dumb little kid. Joel didn't usually let Bobby go along with his route, though Donnie went along lots of times. He had his own bike. Blasting Toby on his bike along with a roll of papers was a real trick. Besides, Tony really helped. He didn't just tag along asking questions, getting him on the way. Tony, would the Zabrinskys ever find him? The teenager said something about Body maybe washing up at one of the dams. Next week, next month, maybe. Why hadn't Joel just told his father about Tony's going down to the river to swim? About his going on to Starved Rock while Tony went to the river, when his father could tell the Zabrinskys and the Zabrinskys would be nowhere to look. Somehow, nothing had came out right. Can I, Joel, please? Bobby repeated. And when Joel looked down at his brother, at the eagerness in Bobby's upturned face, his throat closed, and he had to turn away. Yeah, he managed to croak. I guess he can help with my route today. Woo-wee, Bobby yelled. And he clapped his puggy hands and skittered out of the room and back down as scared. Joe squared his shoulders, took a deep breath. Then he stopped, breathed again, sniffed. What was that smell in the air? Almost exactly a dead fish. Joe sniffed his arm, his shirt. That's where it was coming from. Him. Joe drew the neck of his shirt up over his nose and inhaled deeply. There was no question. Steve the Rare had followed him home. And his father didn't have noticed either. Joe put his shirt off and got another from the drawer. The new shirt was fresh. It smelled like his mom's favorite shop softener. But the flight fragrance couldn't cover the stank of a river climbing to his skin. Joe started down the steps. Maybe not even knew what a river smelled like. Bobby was holding a screen. Door opened for her mother. Looking tired and a little bit frazzled, she set down a grocery bag and she was carrying came to the bathroom bottom of the stairs. She started with her hands on her hips and decided to lead the way. Bobby had, when he was imitating her earlier, what on earth are you doing today? Joel. Mrs. Zabrinsky says you and Tony hid in the house all afternoon. Joel closed his eyes. It was going to start all over again. That was a problem with having two parents. You never had anything only once. He drew in his breath, composed his face, and continued down the stairs. There was nothing he could do about the smell. Tony wasn't here, he said. I wasn't hiding. I was lying down. Lying down? Joel's mother reached to feel his forehead. What's the matter? Are you sick? No, Joel answered, submitting the cool hand and pressed his head. Just not feeling good for a little bit. What did you do and you Tony do today? His mother asked, her other hand circling the back as if she could feel the temperature better by pressing up both hands. Her eyes were on his face. Just rotor bikes. The rusty river smell was strong if it made her eyes burn. She had to smell it. There's no way she could miss it. How far'd you go? Joe jerked free and ducking and coming up the feet down to the hall of the back of his mother. Not very far. Tony was going to ride out of a starved rock. Dad said we could, but I didn't feel good. Like I told you, so I came home. He couldn't tell that she was doing behind him, and he didn't want to turn around to look. Starved rock, she repeated. But that's so far. Dad gave us permission, he said, and then he amended. He said I could go. Well, a white sigh. You better get busy with your route before people start calling. They'll be complaining about their papers being late. Joel felt his body go limp. His mother hadn't smelled the river. She hadn't even guessed he was lying. Relief swirled in his brain, curiously mixed with anger. Didn't know anybody around here pay any attention to anything. He pushed out of the screen door, letting it slam behind him hard. Bobby was squatting on the porch forward, the stack of new papers, tugging on the twice that held him. His small, dirty fingers making a little headway against the knot. Cut it, dummy, Joel said, pulling out his pocket knife. Like this, he cut the twine of the papers and also on his stack of the inserts next to them, his hands moving with angry impatience. Bobby watched his lower lip poking out. You know I don't got a knife. Don't have? Joe cried guffly, looking away from Bobby's face. You don't have a knife. Well, I don't, Bobby said, and he grabbed an inversing circular and stuffed it inside the paper, crumpling both. Take it easy, Joe ordered, thumping Bobby on the top of the head with the handle of the knife. You're going to mess everything up. Bobby's face rumpled and he began to cry. That hurt. He rumbled over the top of his head. Everything hurts, Joe mumbled, but now the anger was replaced by shame. What was he on Bobby about? The poor little kid was only trying to help. Joe began to pull the circles off the stack, one at a time, snapping into place inside the folded papers, rolling the papers ready for him to throwing. Everything hurts. He repeated to himself, except maybe he's being dead. Being dead is probably the one thing that's easy. The throw made his skin go cold and tingly. What's wrong, Joel? Bobby asked. Why do you look like that? His own pain forgotten. But Bobby was staring with his enormous green eyes. Oh, we're at chapter 9. Sorry. Nothing, Joel said, but word came out of sounding squeeze if you're going to help. Start pulling the papers in the bag. Bobby began the papers, but he didn't take his eyes off of Joel's face. Watch where you're doing, Joel snapped, pulling the anger around himself against like a cloak. We're gonna get this show on the road. Bobby nodded sharply and sent the road, rolling the papers as Joel could get them ready. Joel stepped in the road, the fury taking over again, but this time he knew it even though he wanted to punch. It was all Tony's fault. All of it. But Tony knew that was a poor swimmer he was. He had to have relative risks. Now he has gone off and left Joel to answer for him. What was he going to say? Tony's parents would probably be asking questions by the time he got home for his route. Tony isn't home, Joel. Where could he be? You're the last one who saw him alive. Damn it all. Anyway, Joel cried, pushed the rest of the stack of papers off the porch. I'm sick of the stinking paper route. Bowie was standing back on his heels, his eyes in danger of the swelling of his face. He's peering over edge of the porch and then at Joel. You smashed free Mommy's purple things, he said. Joel looked too. The papers were lying in the middle of his mother's petunia bed. Do you want me to get the papers back? Bobby asked. I think if we brush them, they'll still be okay. Alright, Joel insisted. Get them back. Bobby climbed down the steps and then up again. He peered cautiously over the stacked papers he carried. They're okay. Joel? He said, laying down them reverently, as though they were jewels. Joel shook his head, trying to still the red frog had taken possession of his brain. If he could take his hands on Tony now, he would. But that was ridiculous. What would he do? What could anybody do? Beat Tony up? At the thought, he would let out a choking guffaw, half laugher, half sob. Bobby was watching them again, his face wary, with lower lip clenched between small white teeth. Are you okay, Joel? He asked. Yeah, Joel said. I'm okay. He went back to the preparing of papers. I'm alive, aren't I? The paper route seemed endless. Bobby rode behind Joel on his bicycle, seemed to chatter the whole way. Joel tried to listen with half an ear away, but he couldn't with each thunk of paper of the porch. He heard instead Tony's voice challenging, teasing, I'll bet you can get one of them, Mr. Kawuo's hanging journeys. I bet you can't clip the Smith's cat. Why don't you? Joel wanted to yell at Tony to tell him to shut up, but even what Bobby was thinking he was crazy as he started yelling at his voice inside his own head. Why did he feel so responsible? As though he had pushed Tony in? Why did he always have to feel responsible for everything that happened? They had gone climb of the glubs, and Joel had fallen. Tony would blame himself. Would he? Tony had said once that Joel was like an old grandmother fretting at this all the time. Well, Tony ought to see him now. He would laugh. About thought of Tony laughing, Joel almost smiled, and he and Tony had always had so much fun together. Besides the treehouse they were building in summer, they had a lot of other projects going. They always did. For one thing, there was them pooling their allowances to buy a warm farm. The plan was to get rich so big, Tony had to even have an idea of using Mother's meat grinder to grind whatever worms they were at the end of his summer, and sell as them goldfish food. That was because of Joel's father had pointed out as in the other family that woodworms multiplying in the basement over the winter. For his part, Joel was skeptical about the whether many people are nauseous to buy or match for goldfish food, but he hasn't said that to Tony. Last summer, they had concocted a wonderful scheme for getting rich for the decorative pennies. They had flattened 50 pennies by leaving them on the tracks to be run over by a free 45 train. Turning them into thin, coppery discs for playing had been anybody could call successful, though. They sold only 1 penny because every other kid didn't know how to flatten pennies too. The only they sold for the nickel was to a prissy girl whose mother wouldn't allow her to go to the near the tracks. They had been left for 49 pennies they couldn't spend, not even a gumball machine. So Joel tossed the last paper and turned into bike towards home. Bobby had final feeling silent, and Joel was grateful for that. He could feel his brother small, hot hands gripping his shirt and puffs for breath on his back of the neck, so close, so alive. A surge of protectiveness passed through Joel. He would have his teach Bobby how to swim. Bobby was afraid to get his face in the water. Joel would start working him in right away. Every kid needed to know how to swim. Sometimes parents didn't seem to realize what a dangerous place in the world is. Joel turned the corner by his house. He could see his mother and father in the front yard, talking to Mr. and Mrs. Sabrinsky. Seeing the four of them standing here, their faces were silent and intent. Seeing a chill through Joel's bones, what were they talking about? What did they know? By now someone must have been seen through his lie. Or maybe a teenage bully had to come back and turn Joel in. Joel coasted up the driveway and slid out of his bike, pushing into the garage before Bobby had a chance to climb down. Inside the garage, he scooped Bobby out of the seat and sat him on the floor. Thanks, buddy, he said. I appreciate your help. He propped his bike along the wall. Out of the way for cars. I'll help you again tomorrow, Joel, Bobby said to his face and glowing in the darkness of the garage. We'll see, Joel said, patting Bobby's shoulder, began to tinker with his bicycle, shifted his gears back and forth and usually pretending to be engrossed. Bobby watched him for a moment, then he turned and headed outside of the long-legged skip. Mommy, Daddy, he called. But fear was even beyond the front of the garage. Joel's gonna help him with his paper route tomorrow too. Joel studied where he was trying to control the way his hands trembled, the way the muscles and scenes seemed to jerk. They were talking about him out there. He was certain of it. There was no way past him without being seen. If he noticed to stay in the garage any longer, they'd probably notice that too. He shifted gears one last time, slumped his shoulders and pulled his head in, like a turtle retreating to his shell. Then he stepped down into the steering light and out of the driveway. Chapter 10. Joel, would you come here for a moment, please? Joel Farrar called. Joel hesitated, wondering if he dared to pretend that he hadn't heard. Then he turned down slowly, and he kept his head down and moved to a direction of his father's voice. The Sabirskis wants to know where he saw Tony last. His father said, where he had arrived at his side. Joel had sudden image of Tony laughing of a river water streaming his dark hair. On the road, he said, on the road to the Starved Rock. But where on the road? Mr. Sabrinsky asked. How far did you and boys before you turned back? Mr. Sabrinsky was a big man with the huge, rather hairy hands. He sounded impatient. Oh, Joel said, scuffing his head off of the dandelion with a river toward his sneaker. About as far as the bridge over the river, I guess. The bridge over the river, Mr. Sabrinsky repeated with a small gasp. Mr. Sabrinsky whirled toward Joel, and he was on his way to Starved Rock, right? Right, Joel mumbled, wishing again he had remembered the first time he had originally planned. Besides, Mr. Sabrinsky said, Tony can't swim. He know that he better go near the river. He seemed trying to reassure himself. Can't swim? Joe asked, squinting up at her. Really? She smiled and crooked half a smile and seen a million times. You must know that, Joel. You gone to spend the pool with him when he's willing to go. Joel shrugged and tried to look away, but he mostly played in the slide, or the ropes, But he never told me he couldn't swim. Mr. Sabrinsky touched Joel's arm, and without thinking he jerked away. His skin felt clammy, and he was unsure the stink of the river rose of a white little vapor. Maybe I shouldn't have told you, she said. Maybe you wanted to know. He tried swimming lessons once, but he always afraid of the water. Tony afraid. Joel pushed the thought away. Is that all? He asked, stuffing his hand into his pockets. Yes, father said. I guess that's all. And as Joel walked away, trying to look casual, trying to remember how his feet used to move when he wasn't thinking about them, his father added to Sabrinsky's, let's call the park ranger. If he doesn't know anything, he should probably drive out of his there and take a look at ourselves. I suppose I shouldn't worry, Mr. Sabrinsky replied. But you know what Tony's like, I guess. I worry about him more than all the rest of the kids older altogether. Joel stood out through the door in the cool darkness of the hall. Why had Tony thought about his mother? Up of the way she worried before he had decided to go for a swim. Joel stood in the shower. The water streamed over his skin. He had soap 3 times, his hair, everything rinsed in soap again. The water was beginning to grow cool, so he would get it out as soon. His mother would be cross for him for using all the hot water. He turned off the shower till it dry, and he rubbed his skin to smell the nostrils again, the dead fish smell of the river. He considered getting back to the shower, but he didn't get one help, and he knew that. He pulled up his pajama buttons and walked through the dark hall in his bedroom. Bobby was in bed, probably already asleep. Lights were on downstairs, and murmured with his parents' voices of the stairwell. They were talking about Tony, of course, what else? He didn't turn off the wire of his room. He simply headed for the dark shade of his bed and lay down on the top of the spread, arranging his arms and legs gingerly as he painted him. After a while, he heard light at the foot of the stairs, and his mother came out of his room. She sat down next to him in bed, so close that he knew she had pretending not to be offended by the smell. Joel said, Are you sure you told us everything you know? About what? He demanded roughly, as he didn't understand what she meant, wishing it were possible not to understand. About Tony, about what you boys did today? For an instant, he thought he was telling her. It would have been such a relief to let the words spill out. But when shock and tears come, then he thought he was about telling the Sabrinskys too, and the police, about the twisted disappointment in his father's face. As he simply couldn't. He flopped over his stomach, muffling his response with a pillow. I already told you. I got tired and came home. I don't know what Tony did. Did you boys have a fight? She asked gently. Joe remembered being mad at Tony, but he couldn't remember now why he'd been mad, especially he remembered saying, You're the one who's scared. No, he said, we didn't have a fight. His mother continued to sit here, she expecting him to say more. After a while, Joe began to hold his tongue between his teeth. It is the only way he would hang on words that threatened come tumbling in his mouth. I know where Tony is, he wanted to say. I can tell you exactly where they're beginning to looking. Finally, his mother leaned over and kissed the back of his head, then got up to go. And then as she left the room, Joel unlocked his jaws, relishing the burning pain in his tongue. A few minutes later, I heard his footsteps, father's footsteps down the stairs, heard him stop just outside his room. He waited there for a long time, but Joe pretended to sleep, lying perfectly still and concentrating, keep his breathing steady and slow. Bobby was far away too. Joe buried his face in his pillow, pressing his nose and mouth in his suffocating darkness. It would have been better if me and Tony had tied himself together and climbed the bluffs. At least he wouldn't have been left behind. Chapter 11. Joe waiting. He started into the darkness until his eyes atched. Straining to see here, though he wasn't waiting for. When he heard the sound of the last, such when on a mobile with high the pavement, the full HUD of the doors closing, muted voices and started moving clearly to his window. A car had stopped in front of Mrs. Bernstein's house, and two men were walking from the front door. Joel gasped, "Police!" The men were police officers. The teenage boy was reporting them after all. He tried to pull his jeans over his pajamas, but his foot going tapping over the fabric. He kicked the jeans out of his way and huddled down the stairs. He had explained. And the police found out Mr. Bernstein about the lie he had told. The front door was locked. The last precious seconds he spent it with jerking the lies away until the door was finally spring towards him. He pushed the screen door out of his way. Out of the edge of the porch, he stopped, caught his balance at the top of the step. Across the street, Mr. Zabrinsky shouted at his front doorway, talking to the officers behind him. Tony's mother moved through the white ball through the door. In the cluster of men, Joel's stomach twisted and he was too late. He turned to go back inside, the door opened and his father stepped into the porch. Buttoning in the short-sleeved shirt, Joel looked to see if his mother was coming too, but she wasn't. She was already gone to sleep. "Come on, son," his father said. "Let's see if there's anything we can do." "No," Joel wanted to whisper. To shout, "I'm not going over there." Not a single mouth came out of his mouth, though, and when his father put his hand on his shoulder, he seemed to lose all the capacity to resist. He turned and walked towards Bernstein's house. "Here's a boy who was Tony with." Bernstein was saying Joel was his father joined the officers on the porch. Mr. Bernstein spoke without inflection. All the life seemed to have squeezed out of his voice. The two policemen were pivoted simultaneously, I can't say it, to face Joel, her eyes shadowed by the visitors' their caps, her mouth set lines on one of them plastic bags from which he had drowned. Tony Palaio's blue shirt. Joel stepped backward, but his father held an arm behind him. Joel could tell his father it was protecting him, preventing him from running away. "What have you found?" his father asked. "Boy's clothes." The officer holding his shirt said, "By the river is Spike too." Joel stole a glimpse of Tony's mother. She was swaying. Her hands were pressed against her face. Did she know the truth? Did she know she had been before? That he hadn't seen it all? He couldn't tell? Did he know Tony went to the river, Joel? Mr. Zabrinsky asked the same lifeless voice he had to use at first. "No," Joel said. "I didn't know anything. I got tired. I told you They were all looking for him. The police officers, Tony's parents, and his father staring again. Joel started to walk away, and again his father's arm prevented him from doing so. The slight pressure then already back made him longer to strike out, to break away and to run if he could get away to hide someplace where his terrible eyes could follow. Why had he come back for Starved Rock? He couldn't seem to remember. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Tony was going to do swimming. I tried to stop him and told the river was dangerous. "And did you see him and to go to the water?" one of the officers asked. Stepping closer to Joel, the other one moved closer too, asking, "Were you there?" "No." Joel cried, "No." "Nobody's blaming you, son," the first officer said. "But the more that you can tell your friend's parents," he indicated that Zabrinsky was on one hand as fell his directions Joel's attention to a patriotic statue in the doorway there. "The easier will be it's for not, knowing that it's the worst. Please," Mr. Zabrinsky whispered. "If you know anything," Mr. Zabrinsky word against the door frame, one massive first against his mouth, weeping silently. "Joel," his father said, "you got to tell us." Then he turned to officers and added, laying his arms heavily across the shoulders, "Joel is his honorable boy. He'll tell you what he knows." "Honorable?" Joel strangled beneath his weight of his father's arm and pulled away, teetering on the edge of a porch. 5 faces between porches and were like 5 pale moons. Like it was father's face that loomed the largest. He took a deep breath, told wanting to climb the bluff to start proc, and I was scared to do it. Then he changed his mind and decided to go swimming instead. I thought he was going to swim, shaking all over as he spoke. I looked for him, and when he went under. I tried to find him, but I couldn't. He just disappeared. Oh, Joel. The arm had been folding him, didn't reach out of it, touching him again. Joel, his father repeated. Sabrinsky mooned and stepped backward into the shadowy hall. Tony's mother stood perfectly still. She didn't look at her husband. She stared only at Joel, her face twisted and ugly. Everybody was looking at him, blaming him. He wanted to turn away to one her asked, but her face refused to carry him in that direction. Instead, he stumbles towards his father, his hands clenches his fists. I hate you, he cried, pounding at his father's chest. It's all your fault. You never should have let me go. His father said nothing. Did nothing to shield himself from Joel's fists. He simply stood there, absorbing the force of the belt until Joel could bear it no longer. He turned and leaped to the porch and bolted across the street. But even as he slammed through the door and he ran up to the stairs to his room, he knew it was his father until he hated. It wasn't his father at all. He was the one. Tony had died because of him. And Joel is like a terrible liar, so do not lie to your parents at all. Do not lie,